sit yourself on your left and bring yourself into cross-leg position. So just have a little wiggle around so that you feel like you're even. Or if you're sitting on something more firm, perhaps you might need to just roll over and move the buttock flesh out to the side, just so that you've got a little more kind of evenness underneath the seat bones. Grip around your knees and lift and open the chest. So close your eyes for a moment and focus on inhalations, filling the lungs all the way from the nostrils to the lining of the lungs. Filling both lungs evenly, feeling the chest rise upward and outward, all with the in-breath. And the chest gently lowers and relaxes with the out-breath. Use that out-breath to extend, as the chest relaxes, use that out-breath to expand the chest upwards a little more, expand the spine up a little more. So bring real elevation into the spine. And then just bring your hands into Namaste. Pressing the palms together, lengthening from the armpits into the elbows into the heels of the hands. Focusing on the inflation and deflation of the ribs and the lungs. And then draw your chin down to meet your chest. Spend a moment to seek to generate a genuine, heartfelt sense of gratitude for something or someone. Holding onto that feeling, release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. And as you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open. Just grip around your knees, lift and open the chest, drive the spine upwards, draw the shoulders down away from your ears. Take a good, strong, deep inhalation in through the nose. And then with an exhalation, turn to the right side, drawing the abdomen across, the ribs across, the shoulders across. Listening to the sound of the breath as it enters and as it exits. Back to the center, grip around your knees. Lift and open the chest, drive the breath in through the nose. And then turn to the left. Using the out breath to intensify turn of the spine. Just spending these first couple of minutes just observing your physical response to the pose. Come back to the center. Just come off your lift and sit yourself back down into Virasana, just rolling into the inner heel. So trying to get the outer buttocks into the inner heels so that your inner heels are kind of rolling out slightly. So the little toe side of the feet are firmly in contact with the floor. Lift and open the chest and then come forwards. Keep wriggling into the hips, stretching your arms away, and then bring your head down. So I'm using a block just to kind of prevent bringing my head down too far because of my tooth extraction, but otherwise just go down to the floor. But if you find that when you bring your head down to the floor that you lose that length of the front chest, you lose tadasana in the chest, then use a block underneath your head and just notice that it brings additional length to the front of the body. It allows you to breathe more deeply, so you can experiment with the height of the block. Just listening to the sound of the breath, feeling that you can really open up your lumbar spine by sitting back on the heels and stretching into the arms. And then come up onto your knees. Your little fingers on the edge of the mat, stretch your thumbs towards each other, turn your toes under, and then just come up into Adho Mukha Svanasana. So just feel your way into the pose to start off with. Just find where your legs can become activated, where you can open the backs of the knees, where you can lift the seat bones. Press the palms of the hands into the floor. Press the heels of the hands into the floor. Spread your toes. And work from the floor upwards to the pinnacle of the triangle, to the seat bones. Tilt in the seat bones up towards the ceiling, getting those legs to straighten. Breathing nice and softly in through the nose and out through the nose. Okay, step forwards, come up into a standing position, and then using blocks for your hands for half Uttanasana, bring your feet wide, turning your toes inwards, lift and open the chest, spread the toes, and then hinge at the hips, keeping that front chest long. So you can be on the heels of the hands to start off with, and let your weight drive down into your hands so that you can lift the heels up off the floor, so that you can tilt the seat bones up and then hit the legs back. So feel where you need extension, where you need opening. So the backs of my legs today feel kind of reluctant to open. But then we focus heavily on one area and we lose the chest. So just come back up and go into, so yesterday we were focusing on tadasanaizing the pose. So even though the feet are apart, even though the feet are turned in, we can still work from the toes, spreading the toes, lengthening the heels away from the toes, hitting the shins back, hitting the kneecaps into the back of the knee, turning the thighs inwards, lifting from the hips up into the armpits, and then lifting the front chest, feeling that front chest scooping the abdomen up towards the diaphragm, towards the collarbone, and then maintaining that lift of the front chest as you come forwards. Maintaining the action, the tadasana action of your legs as you come forward. So just feel that you can maintain the lift of the chest. So really, this position is Dandasana, isn't it? But you're usually sitting on the floor with your legs along the floor in Dandasana, but it's the same thing. So work your legs as if you're doing Dandasana. So you press your shins to the floor, you press the knees through to the floor, you press your thighs through to the floor, you rotate those thighs inwards and you lift the seat bones, and then you lift and open the chest. If you press the little toes really firmly into the floor, you can suck the outer thighs inwards, helping you suck the outer hips inwards, giving you extension in the front chest. Like a tube of toothpaste, you're squeezing the hips inwards in order to create a tube of toothpaste effect in the front chest. So breathe in nice and softly. So the legs are firmly activated. The little toe side of the foot is pressing into the floor. The little toe is stamping into the floor to suck the outer thighs in. And then we're getting extension into the tube of toothpaste. Come down, if you can come down a little lower, then just bring the blocks down to the next stage. Don't go all the way to the floor quite yet. So with each incremental move, feel that you can maintain the activity of the legs and the extension of the front chest, that abdomen scooping up to the chin. Breathe broadly. Feel that you can broaden out at the abdomen towards the abdominal walls, like you're kind of scooping the flesh from the belly button out to the abdominal wall. And if you can come down lower, then do. Breathe in nice and softly, keeping the legs firm. Listening to the sounds of the breath. Broadening the abdominal flesh outwards, bend your arms out to the side if you can, and then get hold of the backs of the heels. If you can, don't go forwards too much if you can feel your back is kind of resisting. So from the feet, spread the toes, hit the little toes into the floor, suck the outer thighs in, so you squeeze the hips in, broaden the abdomen, and keep the front chest long as you bend your elbows out and draw the body along the floor. So the legs remain really straight, not along the floor, along the legs. So the legs remain really straight. Breathing nice and softly. Okay, and then just release your hands, bring your hands into your hips, bend your knees on the way up if you need to, and then come up into standing position. Just come up into Tadasana. So Dandasana and Tadasana are kind of indelibly linked, because Dandasana, or Tadasana, is the central standing pose, and Dandasana is the central seated pose. And so, as we were exploring yesterday, we try and find tadasana in our standing poses. So we work from the toes upwards into the shins, into the kneecaps, lifting them up out of the sockets. So the shins draw up to the knees draw up to the thighs draw up to the hips draw up to the armpits. The ears draw down to the shoulders draw down to the outer edge of the arms, to the tops of the hands, down to the tips of the fingers, and then from the tips of the fingers, you stretch up with the inner palm up to the wrists, up to the inner elbow, up to the armpit. Lengthening the neck up towards the ceiling. Bring your arms out nice and wide, in towards your chest, and then step or jump. And then immediately return that tadasana action into the legs, into the chest, into the head. Turn your left toes in, your right leg and foot all the way out. Bring tadasana into the pose. The one difference that we have here is that when the body is facing this way, the legs rotate outwards rather than inwards, because turning the legs inwards makes the buttocks hit back, but we want to draw the opposite, so we would draw these thighs outwards. So return back to tadasana. Feel that you're working your legs, lifting the shins to the knees to the thighs to the hips to the armpits, the ears to the shoulders to the hands to the fingertips, the underside of the fingertips to the palms, to the inner elbow, to the armpit. And then come over. So where does tadasana go? Does it stay or does it disappear? Can you still feel the lift of the chest? Can you still feel the action of the legs? Do you feel like you're lifting away from the floor or you're collapsing down to the floor? So in that passage in Light on Life that I've been reading to you, it says that when we do trikonasana, we all fall into the same traps. We feel like everything's collapsing downwards. But if we can learn to lift and open, then we open the shutters that prevent the light of Ananda from shining out, that light of bliss shining out through the pose. Reach up with the top hand, come back to the center, swap the feet around. So you could just translate that Anandamaya Kosa just as the feeling of lightness rather than just a luminescence. So when we come into the pose, if we learn to lift away from the floor, which is effectively tadasana, then we find our lightness within the pose. And ultimately, feeling light in the pose is the ultimate freedom within the pose. Of course, we have to understand when to come out of the pose because it becomes ineffective. As long as we can feel that lightness, or at least search for that lightness, we can stay. keep the breath soft and the jaw soft and the tongue soft. Reach up with the top hand, come back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and step or jump your feet back together. Just lift and open the chest. So notice that when you come back into Tadasana, maybe you come back into Tadasana with your weight in your toes and your heels light. Maybe your initial Tadasana is a bit of a kind of limp Tadasana. So just like a seedling that pokes its head out of the earth, reaching up towards the sun, from the feet we lift up and out of the floor. Okay, and then just release, and then come down onto the floor for Badakanasana. So you can, if you want to, sit on a lift. Get hold of the big toes and lift the chest. Push the heels firmly together and then lengthen the inner groin into the inner knee. So soften your jaw, soften your tongue. Push the heels firmly together to create compactness in your hips. So you suck from the hips up into the armpits, drawing down from the ears into the shoulders, drawing the shoulders down into the outer arms, into the hands, and then lifting the inner arms up into the armpits. Breathe in nice and softly. In through the nose and out through the nose. And then just stretch your legs out in front. So again, if this feels like you will struggle to kind of lift and open the chest, then you can sit on a folded blanket, or you can sit on some blocks, or you can pile those blocks up so that they're kind of high. So you can come up onto them this way, or you can go onto them that way, or you can pile them up. So you've got several kind of piled up into kind of into a height, or you just sit on the whatever you sit on at the beginning. But otherwise, just roll over and move the buttock flesh out to the side. So Dandasana is feet together, but sometimes it's easier, at least at first, to have the feet slightly apart. We can activate the legs better with the feet apart, and we can probably come forwards a little easier when the feet are apart. So just lean back for a moment. So lean isn't a word that we use very often, is it? So just lean back for a moment and then just look at your legs, and then try and extend from the inner groin into the inner heel. So try and lengthen those inner legs. Let me just bring the light down a bit more. So try and lengthen from the inner groin into the inner heel. Don't know what Siri was saying there. So push into from the inner heel from the inner groin into the inner heel, and lift and open the chest. So we're leaning back, but we're then starting to lift and open the chest. So it's almost like we go into Padasana. We're not going to do that, but we're going to work the legs really intensely. So it's like you're pushing your feet into a wall, and then you lengthen the shins away from the feet, but you leave the feet on the wall. And then you lift the kneecaps away from the shins up into the thighs, and then suck the outer hips inwards by pressing the little toes into the imaginary wall. and then lift the chest, and then walk yourself forward so that you're in a right angle. And then release. So when you walked yourself forwards, did you lose your legs? So chances are, as you came forward, so when I came forwards, I could feel I was losing the ability to kind of work my legs with the same intensity. As I came forwards, I felt this leg especially kind of losing that kind of focus of attention. So let's all now sit on a lift. So if you're not sitting on a lift already, sit on a lift. If you're sitting on a lift, try sitting on a slightly higher lift. So I'm just going to sit on a folded blanket, which should give us a bit more. Now, immediately, as soon as you lift a little, there's a difference in the way that you can lift and elevate your chest. So again, you can stay with your legs slightly apart. It just gives you space to kind of just maneuver a little bit. That's not the classical way to do it, of course, but sometimes it's good to just adjust. So just roll over so the feet are hip width apart. So again, lengthening from the inner groin into the inner heel, and then lean back a little. So leaning back is just a way of allowing yourself to focus on the legs. So push the feet into your imaginary wall, and then suck the shins away from the feet. Suck the kneecaps up to the thighs up into the hips, and then really lift and open the chest. Take some deep breaths. Lead with the chest and then come forward so you come into a right angle, and just see if sitting on the lift gives you a little more ability to maintain the action of the legs. So pushing the kneecaps through to the backs of the knees, pressing the thighs into the floor, turning these thighs inwards, lifting and opening the chest, and then raise your arms. Breathe in nice and softly, in through the nose and out through the nose. So it's dog down, isn't it? But gravity is different. So hit the legs down to the floor. Lengthen the shins away from the ankles, knees away from the shins, thighs up into the hip socket. Sucking the outer thighs inwards if you can, sucking the outer hips in, tube of toothpaste in up into the chest. Breathe in nice and softly, in through the nose and out through the nose. And then just gently release. Bring the legs into cross legs just to refresh the action of the legs. And then lift and open the chest. So the shape of that pose of kind of Urdhva, hasta, Dandasana is the same as dog down, isn't it? But it feels really different in the chest and in the arms especially. But the legs kind of work with deep intensity because it's got somewhere to push into. So just using your swastikasana just to extend the spine upwards, just to draw the shoulders down away from your ears, just to kind of refresh the action of the legs. Breathe in nice and softly, in through the nose and out through the nose. And then just send the legs out again. This time, let's go with the feet together, so the more kind of classical shape. So again, lengthening from the inner groin into the inner heel, pushing your feet against an imaginary wall, like you're standing on your feet, sucking the shins up away from the ankles, the kneecaps away from the shins, the thighs right up into the hip socket, and then lift and open the chest and drive the spine upwards. Breathe in nice and softly, in through the nose and out through the nose. Can you lift the front of the chest and allow the back of the chest to descend? All without losing the legs. So it's when you kind of incorporate a new action, sometimes other things drop, don't they? So pressing the legs down into the floor. Who would have said that sitting down could be so much effort, hey? So press the thighs down into the floor, turn the thighs inwards, lift up into the little finger side of the arms. And then release. And cross your legs the other way round. So the kind of unnatural way. And then lift and open the chest. So soft in the jaw, soft in the tongue. Just listening to the sound of the breath. Okay, we're going to do Urdhva, Prasarita, Padasana, which again brings us into the same kind of shape. Now, if you've got a bad back, you're going to come up and down with your legs bent. And if you struggle to lift your legs to a right angle, then you can put a blanket underneath just the small of your back. But I'll show you first. It's really helpful to have a belt for this. So you pull, so you just have the belt, and it doesn't have to be in a loop or anything. You just hold on to it like this. So you stretch your arms away, you extend, so you bring tadasana into the pose. So it's like you're doing tadasana along the floor. After being in Dandasana, tadasana feels very long. Take a good deep in breath, and then you bring your legs to 12 o'clock, and then you hold onto the belt, and then you can bring your legs back. But if you've got a problem with your back, you bend your knees, bring your knees in towards your chest, stretch up, and then bend your knees to come back down. Okay, so that's the basic shape. So bring yourself down onto the floor and hold the belt, at shoulder width. So you kind of pull out on the belt and then work into tadasana legs, tadasana chest. So holding onto the belt above your head. If your shoulders are stiff, then you can put some lifts underneath your hands if you need them. But just work on tadasana initially, lengthening from the inner groin into the inner heel. Pressing the feet into an imaginary wall. Breathing nice and softly. Allow the abdominal region to broaden outwards to the side ribs, to the side abdominal walls rather. So the abdomen to broaden to the abdominal walls, like we were doing in Uttanasana at the beginning. And then raise your legs to 12 o'clock. So remember, bending your knees if you need to. Lengthen from the inner groin into the inner heel. Push your feet into an imaginary wall. And then lengthen the shins away from the heels, but keep the heels lifted. Kneecaps into the thighs, thighs into the hips. And then broaden the abdomen. So in this version of Dandasana, if you like, the spine is supported by the floor. We can feel that we can get good length along the spine. The legs feel a little lost, don't they? Because we've got no floor to push back into. So just work to imagine that your legs are pushing into an imaginary floor. Breathing nice and softly in through the nose and out through the nose. Okay, and then just bring your legs back down, bending the knees if you need to. And then bring the legs into Supta Badakanasana for a moment, just to reset and to release. And just allow the body to just rest into the floor. So listening to the sounds of the breath as they enter and as they exit. Just letting go of any tension in the hips, in the legs, in the chest. Just using this as a recuperative pose. So one of the benefits of Urdhva Prasarita Padasana is that you got the floor to help you to elongate the spine. The spine stays straight. Okay, draw your knees towards each other. And then just lengthen your legs along the floor. And then just hook or hold on to the belt again, shoulder width. And then raise the legs. So find the legs at 12 o'clock. If you can't come to 12 o'clock, put a blanket or some blocks underneath the small of your back so that you can extend those legs up to the ceiling. Find that lightness. Find that you can open the shutters to your own lightness. Fill in your body with the asana. Spend some time in the pose. Just feel how the spine is elongated along the floor. Breathing nice and softly. Extending the legs as though the legs were on the floor. And then bring the legs back down, bend your knees if you need to. And then come back into Supta Badakanasana. So this is all strong actions in the chest, in the spine, in the legs. Breathe nice and softly, just keep the breath soft and deep. So the support of the floor gives you that kind of lightness of extension in the chest. It doesn't give you lightness of extension in the legs, does it? But you have to work the legs firmly in order to find that lightness. So we work on the exterior so that we can let the things inside that can help out, or at least to have a glimpse of them. Okay, draw your knees together, pull your knees in towards your chest, just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom. So although this is all mainly floor work, it's pretty intense, isn't it? There's a lot of muscular control required. And then rock yourself up into a seated position. So we've done that dog down kind of shape in Dandasana. We've done it in Urdhva Prasarita Padasana. So let's just go that back down onto our front and have the fingertips underneath your shoulders. Turn your toes under, walk your toes towards your head, and then just bring yourself up into dog down. And try and feel as though your back is along the floor in Urdhva Prasarita Padasana. Your legs are pressing into the floor in Dandasana. That there is lightness to be found. So when we defy gravity, it's as though we open up the shutters of bliss within, shining out. Just stay for as long as it feels effective and useful. Breathing gently and deeply. down onto your knees. Sit back on your heels. And then go back down into Adho Mukha Virasana. Okay, and then just sit back on your heels. Just stay in Virasana for a moment, just lifting and opening the chest. Stretch your arms down to the floor, interlock your fingers, turn, let me just turn around to someone facing you. Turn the hands all the way out. Extend the spine up towards the ceiling. Take a good deep in breath and then turn to the right side. Urdhva Virasana. Come back to the center and then turn to left. Just feel the openness it brings around the spine as you turn. And then come back to the center and then release your hands down towards the floor, just letting the shoulders soften. So we're gonna finish off with a restorative pose. So we're going to do the spinal lengthening pose. So you get your blanket, just fold it out so it's this long kind of quarter fold, and then you're just going to fold it, just have it flat and kind of neatly folded as much as possible, and then fold it down the middle, and then you fold it down the middle again. So you create this little kind of bolster for your back. And this is going to give us this feeling of lengthening in the spine. It's really good for energy. So all of the stuff that we've been doing has been about lifting and opening the chest. If you've got a kind of a chunky bit because of your blanket has got a hem, then put that at your head end. So we're going to have the blanket, the rolled up blanket for your back, and then you need a bolster for your for underneath your knees. Now, if you haven't got a bolster, you can just use some cushions, or you can kind of fold up some blankets into a kind of a cylindrical shape. So if you haven't got a bolster, you can just put, or you can even just put some blocks kind of underneath your knees. I'll show you. So you can kind of have your blocks underneath your knees like that, so you've got the blocks just supporting your knees. But a bolster is good if you've got one of those. So just sit so that you're not sitting directly on the blanket, but you're sitting quite close. You're about an inch away from the blanket. You've got the bolster underneath your knees. And then you're going to lift the chest. You're going to extend the spine away and then elongate the spine along the blanket. And then you get the end and you fold it up and roll it into a little pillow. And then you have to experiment a little bit. You have to find where the bolster goes that activates this feeling of extension. It should probably go underneath your knees, maybe even towards the shins a little. So just adjust until you feel that you are in a position that you're going to be able to stay in. If it feels like actually that's a bit uncomfortable on my back, I'm not going to be able to stay, then bring yourself out of the pose and then adjust so that you're in a better position and so that you are going to be able to stay. So we're going to be here for a little while, so you need to be comfortable. So feel that your head is supported by the rolled up blanket. And then if you're wearing glasses, it's nice to take them off for this. Just find the position underneath your knees for the bolster and then just let go. Allow yourself just the permission to release. But remember, this isn't an exercise in stillness particularly. If you're not getting the effect that you want, then adjust it till you do. Try not to wriggle forever. Find the sweet spot and remain there. So as you stay, just feel the sensation of the elongation of the spine. So no longer working to extend, we're just allowing the equipment to do it for us. Continue to focus on deep inhalations, deep exhalations, filling the lungs evenly, being conscious of the movement of the breath, the lifting upward and outward of the in-breath, and the lowering of the chest with the out-breath, the relaxation of the chest with the out-breath. So remember, if this isn't comfortable for you, adjust your equipment until it is comfortable. Just bend your knees, just roll over, and then just move the blanket out from underneath you and then roll back just for a final shavasana. You can keep the bolster from underneath your knees. If your head rolls back, or if it feels like it's rolling back, you can always put the folded blanket underneath your head. Otherwise, just allow yourself to release into the floor. Just feel that freedom around the spine. Energy is emanating from the spinal region. Just totally let go with the muscles of the arms and the legs. Listen to the sound of the breath. Let the body become heavy on the floor. And observe the lightness. Rises to the uppermost skin. Little glimpse of the Mandamaya Kosa, the blissful body. And then bend your knees, draw your knees in towards your chest. Just have a little grounding massage on your spine. Just rocking from side to side, from top to bottom, just giving yourself a gentle massage. And then just roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out the legs. Come up into a seated position. Final cross legs with your hands in the mat, just a final spinal lift. Just draw the breath in through your nose, down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice this morning. Good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy. The extensions, the forward bends, twists, the reclining poses bring to the body and to the mind. Draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you've created inside. And send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then just gently release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards. As you raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. Thank you. So hopefully you feel like you've given yourself a really good kind of quite intense focus on legs and on chest that have brought about some real energy for the rest of your day. So thank you very much.